point that we were maybe discussing earlier on was, is the Celtic Academy as a bloody building, as a recruitment agency for these young boys coming through. We like to think of it that we're doing the right thing, and it was set up by bloody Tommy Burns as well. And I'd like to think Tommy Burns played a huge part in getting the academy started off and all the rest of it. But are we really seeing the fruits of the academy just now coming through? Now, what you're saying, Jerry, as well about Ronnie Dyler, the type of guy he is, yeah, and the type of guy that Peter Loyal has brought in, he obviously wants to develop all of that kind of stuff. Have we actually got the talent within the ranks of the youth academy coming through that it's going to pay dividends, or is it going to just turn into another Murray Park debacle? Jimmy Malk.
Well, I just want to go back to what Jerry was saying there earlier on about, this new philosophy as well and stuff like that. I think, getting back to a psychological point of view, when you look at the game of golf, there's a lot of psychological psychologies.
Psychological psychologies?
Sorry, I'm getting drunk now. Right? There's a lot of sports psychologists involved in golf and other sports. And so when you take soccer players or football players, right, who are human beings the same as we all are, right? When I'm talking about last night, it's a whole new game because we've got a whole team there trying harder because psychologically they need to try and get a new booster, a new manager, blah, blah, blah. They're bopping the league. And I'm expecting a huge change in Celtic's form. So I think from a psychological point of view, again, that in the future, these guys are being told by a guy who's got a philosophy of football based on what Jerry's saying. We need to start looking at diets. We need to start looking at the way we think, our attitude, pass the ball quicker. So to do that, you need to get fitter. If you're a human being who's got depression or anxiety, the first thing a psychologist looks at is your diet and your fitness regime. So when it comes to that, if you improve your fitness, if you improve your diet, then your performance in life is going to improve as well. And that in a football context, it's obviously going to make you a better player as well. And I've always said for years that psychology in football is no implemented enough, because when you guys go in there into a situation and just blast the ball and it gets over the bar, take your time. Just try and, relax a bit more. And they're all psychological things, skills you learn how to just try and relax during games. And I just think that is the way forward. For me, Ronnie Dyler, I've said before, I don't see the point in sacking him because what is the options? But I think that if the guy's got new ideas here talking about where he's involved in this new concept or this new driving force for football to go forward is based on, these diets, the psychological, the philosophy, all that kind of stuff, then give the guy time. Because olden days, even with Lennon and what do you call him, Martin O'Neill, 2-3 years builds a team. Mm-hmm. So why we want to get a new guy in that's got a group of players and try to put forward his new philosophy and then sack it because the players can't adapt to it? Mm-hmm. No, let's get the players in that can adapt to it. A lot of players can't adapt to it, but as long as you get players who are willing to try, that's what we need.
See, the only bizarre thing with what you're saying, Jim, and what Jerry's saying as well, though, it's as if Ronnie Dyler's coming in with this brand new, never before seen philosophy. Jerry, you touched on the fact about Germany, the national team, or not just the national team, but what they did in the Bundesliga anyway, over a space of 4 years. Now, we look at the Scottish Football League, or the SFA, they have had decades to try and put Scottish football right, and they have not done in my opinion, since I was a wee boy, since about maybe, I don't know, the 1986 World Cup was the last time I can remember Scotland being not even a force in Europe or world football, but a team to be reckoned with, let's call them that. I remember they played Spain at Hampden Park, and I think Kenny Dalglish scored a goal or something like that, and blah, blah, blah. That's my kind of recollections of Scotland as a kind of team to be reckoned with in international football. Now, since then, that was, as I said, early 80s probably, mid-80s even. That was probably in the qualifiers for the 86 World Cup. since then, Scottish football and the management of Scottish football has never really progressed beyond that. Now, we're talking about stuff here that a guy from Norway is coming in and talking about playing high-tempo football, being fit. Oh, I mean, this is stuff that continental teams have been doing for decades. Now, Jerry, you said Germany did a bit of a review. It took them 4 years, but they got it right. See if Scottish football now was to do a review starting from tomorrow, and it only took 4 years for them to become
Norway done it.
Back in the get them back to being again, not world beaters, but competitors in international football at that good level. I know they're definitely doing better. There's progression under Strachan, but sure as hell, Strachan will have a string of poor results. He'll get sacked again. They'll bring some other muppet in, and the same old stuff will go on, because there is fundamental flaws with the whole nature of bringing Scottish footballers through the ranks, whatever it may be. No. Whether it's the buckfast, whether it's the drink, or whether it's there's just not the infrastructure there to do it. There's fundamental flaws in Scottish football that they've never really progressed. In a country like Germany, who have had, they've always been there or thereabouts, but they actually got to science. Well, they got to a stage that it still wasn't good enough for them for being, missing out in group stages or something. They've said, bada bing, we need to do something about this. It takes them 4 years, and all of a sudden they're world champions. And their club teams and their league is probably the strongest in world football.
Yep. Kevin, I mean, I think I remember in the 2003, the Seville season, we get knocked out away to Ball, and I was listening to Radio Clyde, and Davy Provan was doing the co-commentary, and that obviously Celtic had been knocked out, and I think he talked about the whole idea of the technique issue, and he made the point that he said basically, quarter of a mile from that stadium there was a sports centre, and all-weather football pitches and all manner of facilities there for sport. And I think he made the point that in Switzerland and many countries that's the case. And see, by comparison, Scotland are a country mile behind. We've started to make up the gap. We've built up a big all-weather facility in Torry Glen. I think there's another one in Aberdeen. There may be 2 or 3. Yeah. But really, if we're serious, you might want to say, well, you might need 30, you might need 40, you might need community coaches and your Airdries, your Coat Bridges. Do you know what I mean? And this idea where you're encouraging young people to play the game, you've got people there that are employed by the local authorities to encourage them, to try and organise them to play the game properly. And by that way, at the grassroots level, you're encouraging, good young players to come through. And, you're right, it's been a long-standing problem, because I've been watching Scottish football since the early 70s, and arguably for 25, 30 years, we've been in decline. The only thing I would say on the other side, I think 2 points about this. First of all, Lennoxtown's there. That's a step forward. We're already working with St Ninian School.
In terms of infrastructure, it's a step forward.
Yeah, aye. But we've also got this. We've got a system where we work with, I think it's St Ninian School, which is, I think it's not far from the training, Lennoxtown. And I think the whole idea is that we're taking the best group of young players at each age, we're giving them training in the morning. As far as I know, they're training at lunchtime, and then they're coming into the club and after school. So I think that's maybe been going for 2 or 3 years. You'd like to think that if we get that right, then what we'll see in a year, 2 or 3 years' time is players that will come into the first team and really be better than what we've seen in the last 5 or 10 years. One thing that was picked up in the podcast yesterday was, I think that Harry Brady mentioned that he'd spoke to people round about the club, and that Dyla takes a very, very hands-on role in terms of the coaches with Woods and John Kennedy and all the people that are working at a younger level. So you'd like to think that all of that will bear fruit. The problem is, Yeah, the problem is Dyler needs to win and do reasonably well for him to have a chance of that succeeding in the long term. He's very much he's on the cusp at the moment. I think last night I was inside the stadium at half time and I thought this could easily go badly wrong and pile the pressure on him. But if there is a plus from last night, we won with a very poor performance. A very poor performance. We're in a brilliant position. You've potentially got Forrest to come back. Hopefully more of the players will buy into what he's doing and it will start to go right. And let's hope that happens. Do you know what I mean? But
fingers crossed,
to give you an example, but in some respects we're always up against it, because I was reading somewhere that Chelsea spend £8 million a year in their youth academy and we spend £1 million. So you could arguably say that Chelsea, would have a better chance of producing good young players than you'd imagine Man United, the Liverpools would be the same. But I'm sure I had listened to something on Radio 5 during the week where they were moaning, from a British perspective, about how academies in general weren't bringing forward top talent and how few players were in like the Arsenal team midweek or the Chelsea team. So a lot of the problems that we're talking about just now aren't even unique to Scotland.
No, that's true.
They're British problems. But let's finish in an optimistic tone. I'm sure half the world away will be broadcasting to an independent Scotland within a few years, and we'll have a strong youth academy where half the first team have come through the academy and are really playing football at a really decent level. I'm always optimistic, guys. It's probably misplaced.
Mate.
And when we get independence, people will be broadcasting from Glasgow and not Western Australia.
Yes, Jimmy, yes. But listen, guys.
I'll still be here.
By the way, one thing, you need to cut the size of these podcasts.
Listen, see if you didn't come on, Jerry, this would only have been about an hour long. Listen, guys. Don't big out, Jerry. Listen, unless you're in a rush, don't go, though, because I want to ask Liam, right, we're talking about the whole youth academy set-up and stuff like this. Now, Liam's the most qualified guy here that knows about the setup in Japan. And I know we've kind of touched on it a little bit in the past about Japanese football and stuff like that in the J-League. But in terms of the infrastructure and the setup of the youth football players, Liam, coming through, and Pat, I'm going to ask you this same... So you get thinking right now, mate, about the whole Aussie setup, because you're more qualified than anybody here to talk about that. But Liam, in terms of Japan, what is the infrastructure like? What's the schooling like? What support is there for young players coming through, and do they get an opportunity into teams in the J League?
Well, here's the thing, right, about Japan is that it's a very, very well organised system, and it actually doesn't require any money to set up.
How's this? Tell us the secret.
Right. Basically, first of all, like when we were in Scotland, you had like primary school, then you had secondary school, right?
Yeah.
Well, in Japan, there's actually 3 schools. There's elementary school you go to for 6 years, which is the same as primary. Then there's junior high school, which is 3 years. Then senior high school, which is 3 years.
Yeah.
Now, from junior high school onwards, the kids have sports clubs.
Yeah.
And participation in a club is mandatory. Like every student has to be in a club. It might not be a sports club, it might be like the music club or the art club or whatever, but you've got to join an after school club. So kids will spend maybe 3 or 4 hours a day practicing whatever it is they choose to do. They have sometimes have a session in the morning and sometimes in the afternoon after school as well.
Yeah.
So kids will spend 3 or 4 hours every day playing whatever sport it is they choose to be in the club.
Yeah.
So by the time you get to like the age of 13 or 14, you've got kids who have got probably several thousand hours experience of playing football.
Yeah.
Right? And then once you get to the end of junior high, by the time you get to the end of junior high, the kids are 15 years old. If they show some while they're at junior high, they'll play in like sort of inter-city tournaments and like prefecture